Can't believe it's been a month already since my holiday, so I thought it was about time I shared with you my journal and my sketches that I did. I hadn't actually planned on going away at all this year, but then I had an offer of a cheap last minute holiday, and then due to some miscommunication, it turned out to be even more last minute than planned. We didn't actually get confirmation until the Friday that my holiday was starting on the Monday, and I'm really grateful that my employers let me have the week off even though I gave them no notice whatsoever. And also I was grateful that my friend was able to come and look after my cat at short notice too, so everybody was taken care of. So the one thing that wasn't a last minute panic to organise was my art bag, because if you've seen my recent video that I did about what's in here, you'll know that it's ready to go at any time. And then the only extra thing that I had to organise was I just had this extra pouch with a few supplies which were for leaving in my accommodation, so like scissors and glue and extra bits and pieces like that. And if you want to know the details about what I took with me, I'll put a link to my recent video. So originally I was planning to take my parents with me for this holiday, but unfortunately my dad had a really bad back, so mum and dad decided to stay home and I ended up going on holiday on my own. Okay, so let's have a look at what I did. So you might recognise this as the sketchbook that I made for my holiday last year, and there's quite a discrepancy in the amount of pages that have been used. I think a lot about how much I sketch has to do with my mindset, and for this holiday particularly, initially I thought my parents were going to be coming with me. I thought I would only be drawing from photos in the evening because I didn't want to keep my parents hanging around while I was sketching. So then of course plans changed and I knew I was going on my own, but the weather forecast was showing rain every day. So again, I was thinking I'm only going to be drawing from photos in the evening. So I knew I wasn't going to need as much space as I had for the previous year. And another difference between my holiday this year and last year was last year where I stayed was only an hour's drive from home. So, although it was Monday to Friday, I could have basically 5 full days. Whereas this time I was going to Cornwall, which is a 4-hour drive, which would also mean that I'd want to stop and have a break. So kind of like 4.5, maybe even 5 hours on the first day and the last day. So that kind of shortened the window of available time for sightseeing and sketching. So first of all, we've got a little map showing the south coast of Cornwall. So I was staying here at this place called Trelawney Manor. I'm still not even sure how to say the name of the place where I stayed, but it was kind of here, roughly halfway between Plymouth and St Austell. So on the first day, I had some last minute cleaning and packing to do. So I did stop for lunch on the way, and I eventually arrived at my accommodation about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And I had a bag of humbugs and chocolate limes in the car for the journey. So I did eat quite a lot of sweets that day. And then on the evening of my first day, I went to visit some friends that lived fairly near where I was staying. And then when I got back to my caravan in the evening, it was so cold. And it took me an embarrassingly long time to figure out how to work the heating. But I did eventually get the heating on, and it got cosy quite quickly. So this is a layout of my caravan and a picture of the outside. I mean, it's nothing fancy to look at from the outside. It's just a large static caravan. And then on the second day, I started with a walk around the actual holiday park. And there was this lake or pond. It's either a big pond or a small lake. And there were a few people kind of at this end fishing or getting set up ready to do some fishing. I ended up painting this from a photo, And behind where I was stood taking the photo, there was actually a bench here, and I did sit down on the bench thinking I was going to draw this scene, but it was so cold and windy. I was just like, no, I'm just going to take a photo. And of course, this is the thing where we were saying about the mindset, because it was already in my mind that most of my artwork was going to be done from photos. I think that kind of held me back a little bit, because that was already what I was expecting to do. So even when I had the opportunity where I could have sat and drawn, I was easily put off by the weather. Whereas if I'd gone with the attitude of, I'm going to draw as much as I can in person, maybe I wouldn't have been so put off by the weather. But anyway, that's kind of beside the point. And where this lake or pond was, there was kind of like a track that ran alongside it. And I followed that track, and that led into like a wooded area. And in amongst the wood, I found this cottage house that was very broken down. I mean, the main walls were still intact, but the upper and lower windows had kind of fallen apart in between. So it kind of looked like just two giant windows. And obviously there was no roof. So I had a little kind of mooch around in there. That was quite interesting. I'd love to know more about the history of this. The actual holiday park itself was in the grounds of this big manor house. And this little one here was like the lodge, I suppose, like the gatehouse maybe, sort of at the entrance. And then you had the main manor house. Again, this was another one that I'd wanted to sit and sketch, but I'd left the page blank so that I could come back and sketch it. But in the end, I ended up just putting together a few photos instead. After exploring the grounds, I then went out for a drive, and I was just looking at road signs that sounded interesting. So I followed one to a place called Stone Rush Lakes, which I just thought sounded lovely, but it turned out just to be another holiday park. And then I followed a sign to a village called Herodsfoot, because I thought that sounded really interesting. But it was basically just, you know, it was a very, very narrow road with a few houses, and there wasn't really very much. I got to this point here where there was like a T-junction in the road, so it was somewhere that I could easily turn around, because like I say, the road was so narrow. So I just at that point turned around and came back up to the main road. But this building here I just thought was fascinating. On the way back up to the main road, I stopped and had a walk in another wood, Trenchway Wood. There is a photo of that later on, but I didn't include anything here. And then I saw a sign for Restomel Castle. I don't know if that's the right way to pronounce it. This is a sketch which I did actually start on location. So if you can see the plan here of the shape of it, although it was actually more round than I've drawn it. But there were two kind of stairways, and you could walk around the perimeter of like the battlements. So the idea would be that you'd go up one set of stairs, walk all the way around, and then come down the other. But on the day that I was there, this set of steps was actually closed to the public, because they had people working up there removing ivy off of the outside of the main wall. So because these steps were closed off and nobody could use them, I thought this would be a good place for me to sit and do my sketch, because I wouldn't be in anybody's way. So I kind of sat at the bottom of these steps, kind of looking across this way to where this, what would you call it? The sticky out bit. So it was kind of like circular apart from the gatehouse, and then this bit sticking out, which is actually the chapel. So kind of looking through here. So this kind of archway is looking through to that chapel area. And on the day when I was there, I just did the pencil outline of this, and then I filled in with pen and the extra detail after I'd got back to the caravan. I could see more details through the doorways, but I wanted to try and keep it as simple as possible to kind of show the layers, because this was kind of like that inner wall, and then there was the outer wall, and then looking through to the sticky out bit. And it was kind of difficult to try and show the depth because of all the kind of broken down walls. So that's why, you know, I've just shaded in where the holes were, just to try and avoid confusing things visually with drawing, you know, more brickwork in the background there. I hope that makes sense. And there is one picture here. This was just a photo I took of the sign, which kind of shows the aerial view. So see the gatehouse and the sticky out bit at the back. There's got to be a better word than that. And from there I went to visit a place called Foy. I didn't stay there particularly long, only about an hour, and I parked in the car park at the top of the hill. It was so steep. It was such a steep hill. It was horrific coming back up because I'm so unfit. But yeah, so this was a place where Daphne du Maurier lived. And I don't know if you knew, I didn't know, that she was the one who wrote the original story that the film The Birds was based on. So this sculpture of a rook with a book is in honour of her. And yeah, and then just one kind of picture that I've included of the front there. Then on the Wednesday, it was raining, particularly in the morning. So I decided that I would go and visit a local indoor market just to try and avoid the rain, really. And all I bought there was a pasty. It was lovely, by the way. It wasn't a traditional Cornish pasty, but it was chicken and bacon, and it was really nice. After that, I went to go and visit a National Trust property with the name of Anthony. And this was another one which I tried to start on location. So I'd kind of explored the gardens and I'd had a tour around the house. And then afterwards I came back to like the little tea shop and I sat outside with my pot of tea and I tried to draw this view. So I was in like a covered colonnade with arches, like you see over here. It was kind of mirrored on this side, so I was kind of sat basically looking through an arch like this towards the house. And I must have tried, I don't know, 4 or 5 times. I kept starting the sketch, rubbing it out, starting the sketch, rubbing it out. And in the end I gave up and I did this one from photo. But I did try and do it on location. And then I don't know if you can see, I don't know if it's shown up on camera, but the teapot, it was a stainless steel teapot, so I used my silver metallic paints for that. Initially I tried just using the silver, but it didn't really look like anything, so I mixed it with a little bit of black and purple, which is kind of what I tend to use for my shadows, just to give it a little bit more of a colour to the shiny. If you've seen the 2010 Alice in Wonderland film by Tim Burton, the scene with Alice and Hamish in the gardens, that was actually filmed here. I don't know if any of other parts of the film were filmed here, but I know definitely that bit in the garden with all the hedges was filmed here. On my way back to my accommodation, I stopped off at a place called Whacker's Quay. Just thought that sounded quite interesting. But unfortunately the tide was out, so there wasn't really anything to see. There are a couple of photos at the end of this place. And then, as you've probably already seen, Craft Hole. I saw the signpost to this village called Craft Hole and I thought, I can't resist. I cannot go past without stopping at Craft Hole. It just sounded amazing. But of course when I got there, you know, it's just a village, not even an old quaint pretty village, just a village. So I literally pulled up at the side of the road, I took a photo of the sign, got back in the car and drove off again. And then the next day I met up with my friend again, and this is a really special spread for me. I think this is probably my favourite from this particular holiday. So this is me and my friend Naomi. And I did check with her that she was happy for me to show her on YouTube, and she said she's always wanted to be famous. So please say hello to Naomi. Yeah, so we met up at the Duchy of Cornwall nursery. So this is my friend who I was visiting, her and her family, on the first evening that I arrived in Cornwall. But it was nice this day to meet up just with Naomi on her own, because obviously when we were with the family and they had a friend there as well, there was lots of chatter and lots of laughing, and it was really good fun. But it was really nice to meet up with her, just the two of us, so we could have a real good catch up, because I've not seen her since January 2020, so it's been a long time since we've met in person. And as you can see, I made Naomi pose with the pumpkins. Because she had an orange hat on, I was like, oh, you're camouflaged with the pumpkins. So she did a little peekaboo in amongst the pumpkins. And then the actual cafe area was really crowded. It was like really busy, really noisy. And the lady asked if we wanted a seat inside or outside. Well, it was pretty cold and it was raining on and off, but the outside area that they had was undercover. So we decided we'd take a risk and go and sit outside, because it was more peaceful and we could kind of look at the view across the garden centre and the landscape in the distance. And when we went outside, all the tables, the chairs all had a blanket hanging over the back, which was really lovely. So we kind of cozied up. We were all like, had a little blanket over our knees. Like a pair of little old ladies we were, but it was nice and cozy. And then I just did a page with just a few different views. So there was loads of like really large, lovely pots around the garden centre. And then obviously our tea and cake. And then this really fat looking robin that was watching us from the fence post. I don't know if he was actually that fat or if he just had his feathers all puffed up because he was cold, but he was a real little ball. And these sketches I actually did after I got home, at the end of the holiday. So after spending the morning with Naomi, and then we went our separate ways, and I headed off to this beach, which I believe is pronounced Lansalos, but I don't know. It's, you know, sometimes when you see something written down but you've never heard it said, or you're not quite sure of the pronunciation. So this was another sketch where I did the initial pencil outline on location, and I probably would have stayed and done more, but then it started raining. So I quickly packed all my stuff away in the bag and kind of started walking back towards the car. And then, because it stopped raining almost straight away. But it's probably good that I didn't hang around much longer, because it was quite a trek back to the car. And by the time I got back to the car, it was starting to get dark a little bit. So I wouldn't have been wanting to walk back in the dark if I'd stayed too much longer sketching on the beach. I did this in obviously watercolour, just as a kind of fairly pale wash. It's quite drab looking, isn't it? There's literally no colour in the sky, but that's kind of more or less how it was on the day. It was quite a drab day, but it was a beautiful place. But I have included a couple of photos and a map sort of later on at the end. And from there I headed back to my accommodation for the evening again. I've not mentioned so far in this video, but I was also doing Inktober at the same time as well. So in amongst the sketches that I was doing specifically for my holiday, I was also doing Inktober sketches too. So then the next day, which was my last day, after everything was all packed up, I went for a visit to a place called Loo, which I always joke is like the smallest beach in the world. It's quite a short beach, and the day that I went there, I didn't even get to go on the beach at all. The tide was in, so as well as being short, there wasn't much beach showing. And what beach there was some kind of tractor machinery kind of going up and down. So I stood at the edge and kind of watched the sea for a little while, but I didn't actually go on the beach that day. But this seagull made me laugh. This was in the car park, and it was, I don't know, just a few meters really away from the sea. But the seagull was standing in a puddle in the car park, and it just really made me laugh. So I thought that he deserved a space in my book. And then from there I headed back towards home, but I stopped off at Honiton in Devon on my way back to go to the Honiton Lace Museum, and there's just a couple of pictures here from the museum. And from there I headed back home. Unfortunately there was a problem with one of the motorways. Following my sat-nav, it took me on all A roads, so instead of going 70 miles an hour down the motorway, I was doing 30, 40 on little country lanes and through towns and villages. So it was quite a long trek, but I was absolutely exhausted by the time I got home. Then the rest of the book is just filled up with some extra photos. So these two selfies, this was from the day when I was exploring the holiday park. So this was by the side of the fishing lake or the pond, where it was particularly windy, and then this was inside the ruined cottage in the woods. Then just one photo from Trenchway Wood. It was a really nice little walk, and I was kind of surprised by how green it was, considering how many brown leaves I was kicking through on the path. And then here's a view of the outside of the castle from sort of the other side of the moat, just looking at the outside wall. And then here is my little sticky out bit. And then a bit more of a collage page of my a few of the photos that I took at Anthony, the National Trust property. One of the things I didn't mention earlier was I nearly didn't get in, because although I am a member of the National Trust, I'd stupidly forgot to put my new membership card in my purse. So when I arrived at the site and I go to get my membership card out, it's out of date. But thankfully the lady who was kind of letting people in trusted me that I am actually a current member. And then also at Anthony, I had some photos of some really unusual kind of fruit and berries that were on the trees that I'd never seen before. When I left Anthony, I stopped at Whacker's Quay where the tide was out, and I saw this little crab. Unfortunately, he's actually dead. I don't mean for this to be a habit. Like at the end of my holiday last year, I ended up including a picture of a dead bat that I'd found. I don't normally take photos of dead animals. It's just a coincidence that at the end of both of my holiday journal pages and with the photos I've got dead creatures. I hope that's not too weird. And then when I met up with my friend Naomi, she gave me this lovely mug that says, "I like cats more than people." And then here's a view of the beach that I went to. Looking, obviously this is not my photo, this was a photo that I got from the National Trust site, kind of looking inwards. So you've got the beach here. Sorry, my neighbours are making a bit of noise. I hope that's not loud on the video. So coming down, so from the car park was kind of up here somewhere. So I kind of came down this way to the beach, which was extremely steep. And then going back up, it was kind of a more kind of roundabout kind of route. So it was longer, I think, but not quite so steep. But it was still steep. And here are some pictures from that walk and the map. So I don't know if you can see from where I parked, sort of it was kind of downhill, and there was a church on the corner. So you kind of walk down one way, and then when you come back up the other way, it sort of meets back at the corner by the church and then back up to the car park. The pathway went down through a wooded area, and there was a stream running alongside the path. So it was sort of very lush and damp, and there were lots of ferns and lovely kind of almost tropical looking in places. This little bridge which went over the stream, I did actually, near the beginning of the walk, I took a selfie on this bridge. Maybe I'll show you here. Which was in stark contrast to a selfie I took near the end of the walk. And then this one was down sort of nearer the beach, just looking back up where I'd come from. And then once I reached the beach, we had this kind of weird, I don't know what you'd call it, this bumpy bit. I'm good with my descriptions today, aren't I? So I walked up to the top of this bump very carefully, because you can't really tell the scale from the photo, but this little track up here was very narrow and it was really windy, so I was being very careful to not get blown off. And then when I got to that top point, I did this kind of panorama of the beach. And then here we've got a closer up view of the little track that goes down the side actually onto the beach. And this stone pathway, it's actually got like wagon ruts in it from when they used to bring stuff up and down from the beach. And here's a couple of what I thought were particularly interesting stone textures that were on the beach. And then at the top end of the beach there was a waterfall, and a lot of the rocks were at this kind of 45-degree angle, which is always impressive to see. So I kind of sat and watched the waves for a while and started the sketch that I showed you earlier. And then when I started walking back, this is the view looking down from up here at the top of the waterfall, looking back down towards the beach. Then on the way back up from the beach through the woodlands, obviously because it was a different route and it wasn't quite so obvious which was the correct path to take. So every time I saw one of these markers with a little pink arrow, I was very excited to know that I was going the right way. And then this was obviously a bit further along on the walk back, looking back down towards the sea, and the beach is down there somewhere. And another view looking back down. Do you remember when I showed on the map where the route kind of converged either side of the church? When I got the first glimpse of the church through a gap in the hedge, I was so excited. I've never been so excited to see a church in my life. It was, first of all, a sign that I was going the right way, because I wasn't 100% sure at that point. And also, it was a sign that I was getting near the end of the walk. I'll be brave and show you another less flattering selfie that I took at this point. I was so exhausted. And then also towards the end of the walk there were 3 stone stiles, and it's got, I don't know how clear it is on the picture, but there's like stone ledges sticking out from the wall to sort of climb up like stairs. But being so late on in the walk, I found it really difficult getting over these. I'm so glad there was nobody there to see me, because it was a real struggle, and I was embarrassed even of myself. Like, you know, if anybody had seen me, oh dear, I would have been so embarrassed. Okay, and then there's some more photos from the last day when I visited Honiton, and a few more samples of the Honiton lace, including a nightdress which apparently belonged to Wallace Simpson. And that's the end of my holiday journal. So thank you very much for watching my flip through and my rambly chat about what I was up to. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you didn't get too bored of all my waffle. Thanks as always, and hopefully see you again soon.